The UK's Brexit negotiator David Davis has been answering questions in the House of Commons today ahead of talks this weekend in Brussels, where it's hoped that a transition deal will be hammered out between the UK and the remaining EU members. There's an EU summit, of course, the following weekend. Vicky Pryce joins us now, who's a board member at the CEBR. Vicky, welcome. Davis has reiterated again that no deal is better than a bad deal. But how do you see things at the moment between the UK and the EU?
First of all, we all know that a bad deal is very bad news. Basically means going back to WTO rules, tariffs, etc., that we may or may not want to be imposing ourselves. So that doesn't make very much sense, I have to say. And all the economic forecasts suggest that, any commentator you talk to. But in terms of how we're moving, I think basically so far we've given in to practically everything the Europeans have asked for. There's still the issue, of course, of what we're going to be doing further on in relation to Northern Ireland and the border there, which hasn't quite been explained from the UK side in a way that satisfies the Europeans. But overall, I think we are accepting quite a lot of their conditions. First of all, we're now saying, yes, even the transition period can end at the end of 2020, instead of going on for the 24 months that we would quite have liked to have seen happen, which is what we said before, 2 years. And also, of course, we are making lots of concessions about EU nationals. At least that's what we hear. It still needs to be clarified. The Europeans have made very clear themselves that what they want is for anyone coming in through the transition period having exactly the same rights as anyone who's here already or will be here before the end of March 2019. We'll see how that develops. There's still an issue about whether the withdrawal bill will have all that in it in detail. But overall, I think we're moving in such a way that we have asked for a transition deal. They've given us something which isn't quite what we asked for. We're accepting it.
Yeah, you referenced the WTO as a bad situation. That's not entirely true that everybody is saying that's necessarily bad. The European Research Group, we know that Jacob Rees-Mogg is heading up that, and he quite often refers to that is a good second play, the WTO, to then start building better trade deals. He doesn't seem to think that going straight to WTO is such a bad idea, rather than a bad deal.
Well, he may think that. Indeed, it's absolutely true that some politicians think that. Most economists, I would say 99.9999%, right, think that actually that would be very bad news. What you don't want to have is trade which is inhibited by whatever sort of constraints there may be. It's very bad news. Now, of course, there are people who say all you need to do is just go to WTO rules, which after all we do enforce, if you like, or accept for the rest of trade with the EU, slash tariffs, that reduces cost to the consumer, and everything will be fine. But the reality is that completely kills your agricultural sector, it completely kills your manufacturing sector, and there is no guarantee that the others who are dealing with you are going to reduce their tariffs themselves. So it doesn't make any sense at all for that to happen. Even those economists who say, the very few who say that actually if we just have a clean break, things will be fine in the longer term, except that there are going to be proper issues in the short term. And of course, as Keynes said very famously, in the long term we're all dead.
Yes, indeed. Let me just quickly talk about the transition deal that is going to be hopefully discussed this weekend ahead of the EU summit. What sort of transition deal do you see being hammered out? How long is it going to take us after March 2019? I mean, and a transition then to what?
Well, the transition deal needs to be agreed now, as quickly as possible, because we only really have until October. From then on, of course, there has to be approval of the Parliament here. There has to be approval, of course, in the rest of Europe as well. So between October and March, I don't think we'll be negotiating any longer. The transition deal is basically going to accept that we stay in practically obeying everything that we're doing right now. So we'll be part of the single market, we'll be part of the customs union. Practically, there may be some little sort of changes that we may be able to get, which we'll be negotiating right now, but I don't think really they're going to make any difference. The real important things, of course, what happens to labour or citizens who are moving in from Europe. That would be a very important one to sort out and really make it very clear so there is no legal uncertainty for anyone who either comes later or is here already. So basically we carry on as before, with ECJ also, the European Court of Justice having a say in what happens. So again, I think we've accepted that that would be the case, with some slight variations there too. So no real change. And for businesses, that would be good news, of course, because that's what they want. They want a customs union and, please, a single market too, if we can, in the longer term as well, although they're not necessarily saying that, but they're certainly talking about the customs union. But the single market is, in fact, considerably more important, and the reason why it is, of course, is because the financial sector is affected by that. You're not an EU country, you're a third country, no passporting.
Yeah. Let's talk about this in the context of growth, 1.5%, 1.8%, whatever it is that people are talking about in 2018. How do you see growth being affected by what's going on at the moment? Do you see the risk of the downside, or do you think ultimately we could well see better growth coming through, especially if we get a fairly benign transition deal hammered out?
We might indeed get better growth. For the moment, though, the main worry is the consumer, because, of course, the real disposable incomes are squeezed because of the high inflation. Lower pound has affected, of course, costs, and wages are not rising as fast as they should be doing, really, with such high employment levels that we have at present. So that's the one issue. The second issue is investment. Obviously, if there is almost a guarantee that things will not change particularly, then I would imagine that businesses might find that they have to invest more. And frankly, here we are, full employment. If you are to continue to be able to meet the demand that's out there, you're going to have to start investing. And we are very fortunate right now that, of course, the world is expanding quite significantly. There have been some hiccups at the beginning of 2018, but overall, we're seeing trade really pick up in a synchronized way. If you look at exports and imports all across the world, developing. And Europe, of course, we export rather a lot to Europe, which is the place we want to leave.
Yeah. Inflation, you mentioned inflation. We're told that it's peaked. Do you think that 3% it has peaked? Do you see that inflation only goes in one direction, down from here?
I think that's probably the case because, of course, the pound has strengthened against the dollar at least, but not against the euro. So it's a function of
the foreign exchange markets more than anything else?
It's all got to do with that. And
so one has to ask why the Bank of England's raising interest rates then?
No real reason,
as
far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But that's a serious consideration we need to worry about looking ahead, because, of course, the era of free money, or almost free money, seems to be coming to an end, and that, of course, has worried markets. They've now decided that perhaps it isn't going to be as bad, that interest rates maybe are not going to rise as fast. But, of course, that affects us as well here in the UK. And the worry is that by the time we leave, which is 2021, we might find that the world economy is beginning to go down again because, of course, the cycle will be running its course.
Yeah, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks indeed for joining us. Vicky Pryce is a board member of the CEBR, with her views on how things stand as we go into the weekend, where those negotiations are hopefully going to bring about some sort of indication as to a transition deal between the UK and the EU.